Hey guys, today I thought of sharing the MCQ discussion of the first 5th unit model paper that was discussed in speed revision day 5. So we have successfully completed the first 4 units plus the last unit, applied biology, in our speed revision. So if you are interested in joining with the class, please join the WhatsApp group for more details. So in this particular model paper, I will be discussing animal tissues, gaseous exchange in animals, and skeletal system. So in the same way, we will be discussing the rest of the 5th unit in the coming few weeks using model papers. So when we take the first question, this is a very basic question, totally based on simple theory. So when we take the human skull, there are two types of bones forming it, as cranial and facial. So there are 8 cranial bones. So there are two important things that you have to know when you study this section: the numbers and there's special features. So those are the most important things that you have to look for when you're studying theory, not just rereading the paragraphs. You have to be very careful in picking up the information that are required when tackling MCQs and structured essays. So the important things in this particular section would be the important unique features of specific bones and their number. So human cranium is formed of 8 bones. So you have to know which bones are paired ones and which are singles. So we only have one single frontal bone, and we have only one occipital bone and one sphenoid and one ethmoid. So those are singles. I will write them here: one frontal, one occipital, one sphenoid, one ethmoid. And we have 2 parietal bones on either side of our head and 2 temporal bones covering right above our ear pinna. So those are the important theory parts regarding this question. So here they are asking which is not involved in the formation of the human cranium. So I have noted everything down here. You can go to the answer directly. It is the zygomatic bone. So zygomatic bone is the cheekbone simply, which is a facial bone, which is not a cranial bone. So that's the point here. So I will show a diagram of the human skull. So these are the bones. You can see it. This is the frontal bone and temporal bone, ethmoid, sphenoid, and parietal, and the rest would be facial bones. So that's done. The second question, a common function to both epithelial tissue and the connective tissue. So this is the beginning, the foundation of the whole animal form and function section. So it is again a simple question. I've added this in one of my online quizzes also. So the common feature, the common function would be providing protection, which is a common function of both epithelial and connective tissues. That's just very simple theory. I won't be further discussing that. I will talk about epithelial tissues and connective tissues in another question. We will meet in the end, I guess. So the third one, not a component of the hydrostatic skeleton. So these type of questions are not much common in practice papers because they're rarely asked, but these days the A-level paper is also having some weird changes, and sometimes they ask questions that were never asked before. So that's the purpose of having new question papers. But back then there was a pattern that always same theories repeating over and over again, but nowadays there are some new structures and new formats for questions. So these type of questions are possible with examples, with choose the mismatching pair, or else write the components when it comes to structured essays. And these basic theories about the beginning and evolution related stuff presenting the animal form and function section are combined with the 3rd unit also sometimes, so be aware of that. So here they're asking what is not a component of hydrostatic skeleton. So there are 3 types of skeletons that we discuss in our syllabus as hydrostatic skeleton, exoskeleton and endoskeleton. So hydrostatic skeleton basically means it's a fluid-filled body cavity. Simply, cnidarians use their gastrovascular cavity, and you have to know that they are acoelomates, like they don't have a coelom because they only have 2 body layers, like they're diploblastic. But when it comes to platyhelminthes and nematodes, annelids, those are triploblastic animals having 3 germ layers. So cnidarians are the first level of invertebrates that we discussed. So they don't have 3 germ layers, they lack mesoglia. So they only have, no, they lack mesoderm. So they only have 2 germ layers. So they are known as diploblastic. They don't have a mesoderm. So when it comes to pseudocoeloms, they have all the 3 germ layers: endoderm, ectoderm and mesoderm. So that's the point there. And since they don't have a coelom, they are using their body cavity, which is the gastrovascular cavity for them, in order to move for locomotion along with as a hydrostatic skeleton. So the next group is nematodes. So they don't have a real coelom, they have a pseudocoelom, which is a fake one. So they're using their pseudocoelom as a skeleton. And the next group would be annelids, and they have a coelom, a real coelom. The first group of animals where we see them is in annelids, so they're using their coelom. So that's the division. I will write it clearly here, so then you won't have any doubts at the end. So cnidarians, they are using their gastrovascular cavity as their hydrostatic skeleton. Nematodes are using their pseudocoelom, and annelids are using their coelom. So all 3 of them are having a hydrostatic skeleton, and I further explained which part of their body is used as a body cavity for this fluid-filled hydrostatic skeleton. Okay, and the next one would be exoskeleton. Obviously, you guys are very aware of that. Just imagine a snail. So they have exoskeleton, and arthropods also have a chitinous exoskeleton. Something about chitin, which is a nitrogen-containing carbohydrate. So those type of stuff has to be clearly stored in your head when it comes to MCQs and structure disease, because they can ask questions that chain together. So this is something, and they combine the next question: what is the component present in the above mentioned organic molecule, above mentioned exoskeleton, like that? I hope you get my point. So the next thing is endoskeleton, where we also have endoskeleton, which is buried in soft tissues, which is present inside. So that's about the 3 types of skeletons present in the among organisms. So here they're asking about not a component of hydrostatic skeleton: gastrovascular cavity present in cnidarians, pseudocoelom present for nematodes, and body cavity for the organisms, for example annelids, and interstitial fluid is the fluid that is filled inside. So hydrostatic skeleton means a body cavity filled with fluid. So that's the basically present 2 components. I'm running out of words. Never mind. So the absent part would be the shell. So the shell is an exoskeleton, and it is present in some mollusks, and snail is the most popular example. So that's about it. The next question: following features could be seen in few human vertebrae. So as I mentioned earlier, knowing the most important features of something and their number is the key to success in the skeletal system part, especially because there are a lot of numbers and some weird unique features present in different vertebrae and in different bones. And likewise, if you take scapula and we talk about different joints and ball and socket joint, hinge joint, so likewise some interesting specific features are present, so you have to know them before going to the exam. So here you ask about the human vertebrae. So I will just summarize what you should know about human vertebrae. So when it comes to types of different vertebrae, there are 7 cervical vertebrae. So this is based on their location and the specialty. So 7 cervical, 12 thoracic, and 5 lumbar is a basic thing. And we have sacral vertebrae and coccygeal vertebrae. So there are 5 bones fused together, and for coccyx we have 4 fused bones. So that is very important. So unique features of them are also something that you have to keep in mind. They rarely ask them in essays, but they can question that in structured essays, and obviously they're going to do it in MCQ. So here let's see what you can do. So I will summarize about cervical vertebrae first. So there are 2 special cases when it comes to cervical vertebrae, the first one and the second one. So the first cervical vertebra would be atlas vertebra. So the next one is axis. So atlas and axis. So atlas is having it's very small and it has a large foramen. And when it comes to axis, it has this special process called odontoid process. And those 2 combine together, and that's why that odontoid process also present there. So that's about cervical. The next thing is thoracic. So thoracic vertebrae are connected with ribs. And how I remember this was like, it looks like an astronaut. It looks like an astronaut. So I will show a picture of this. So thoracic vertebrae it looks like this. So the next one is the typical vertebrae, which is lumbar. We have 5 of them, and sacrum and coccyx. So how can you get through this question? What can you do? So how can you approach this question? I would suggest you to start from the first and the most reasonable point would be, if I was to do this question, I would start with B. So in B, it says facets for articulation with the ribs. So ribs are connected and together and form this thoracic cavity. So it should be obviously thoracic vertebrae. So in that way, you can directly eliminate the second one, third one, and the fifth one, and you're left with first one and the fourth one. So how are you going to do that? It has the same combination except of axis and atlas. So in order for you to get through this, you have to know what is axis and what is atlas. So I will show you a picture of atlas and axis. So here you can see the difference between them. So foramens, the last one, presence of a superior projection arising from the vertebral body. So that is present in the axis, not in the atlas. So that's the major difference between them, and both of them are cervical vertebrae. Atlas is the first one, axis is the second one. Those are also some important stuff. Okay. I think you got a clear understanding about that. So the next question, select the incorrect statement regarding nervous tissue. So the point here is that only neurons are involved in conduction, but glial cells are not, and glial cells are mostly glial cells. They are involved in supporting the neuron in order to carry out their function. So I have done the theory about this in a video, I guess. So you can refer to that if you need further information about the nervous tissue. Okay, the sixth one, incorrect regarding human respiratory system. So like if we take the format or the model in this format of questions that are present in A-level paper and school papers or whatever, what they do is that they convince you by giving very reasonable points that something is correct, but unfortunately that's wrong. So if you don't really remember the theory, you will definitely fall into that trap, because if you consider the logic given in those answers, they're very convincing and they match, and you feel like, oh my god, this is the correct answer, but unfortunately that is not. It's because you're not actively studying, or studying by using the things that you need to highlight in your memory, like words like always and only are some important keywords that you have to definitely remember while you're studying. So here, what I have done when creating this question was that presence of cilia and white blood cells in alveoli aids in engulfing foreign particles. So when you just read this, it's very convincing. It's true that cilia is supporting us in protection, and it is true that obviously WBC are involved in giving protection by engulfing foreign particles. That's true, and it's logically correct. But the point here is that alveolar does not have cilia. So that is the point, and that is very clearly mentioned in the resource book, that because alveolar lack cilia, they have a special type of WBC in order to provide protection. So that's why this is the incorrect statement. So if we take the first statement, alveoli are coated with a surfactant to reduce surface tension, that's true. And two lungs are slightly different in size, and left lung has only 2 lobes, but the right has 3. So you might get confused in this statement also if you don't remember which one is big and which one is small. The reason for the left lung to be small and to have 2 lobes is that the presence of the heart, apex of the heart is near that, so that's why it is small. And the next one, inhaled air is filtered, warmed and humidified. Yes, it is done when it's passed through the nasal cavity. And the fifth one, alveoli are made up of simple squamous epithelia with flat plate-like cells. So if we take this last statement, what they can do is they can write the simple squamous epithelium. Yeah, it's true. You're very sure about that. Simple squamous present in alveoli as well as in blood capillaries. So sometimes they do half of the statement correctly, and they might add cuboidal shaped cells or long brick shaped cells or something. So they can give you a very true point in the beginning, but at the end they just change it to a completely wrong statement. So that's why it's very important to read the question properly from the beginning up until the end when you're answering or reading a question paper. So I hope you got that one correctly. And the next statement, we are done there. So the 7th question, correct statement regarding connective tissue. So fibrous connective tissue is most widely distributed. I will be explaining why each one of them are wrong, so in that way you can use the process of elimination, and I will show how I have tricked you using these statements. So fibrous connective tissue is the most widely distributed connective tissue type. No, it's not. So the most widely distributed connective tissue present in vertebrate body. So that one is also very important, vertebrate body. So that would be areolar tissue or the loose connective tissue. That's why it's wrong. And I will write the reason here. It is areolar tissue or the loose connective tissue. the second statement is correct. I will come to that in a bit. And the third one, each adipose cell in the adipose tissue contains a large number of small fat droplets. No, it contains a single large fat droplet. So I have kind of swapped the wording. So it's not a large number of small fat droplets. It has a large one single fat droplet. So the fourth one, blood has a semi-solid. No, the word semi-solid is wrong there. It has a liquid matrix called plasma, consists of salts, water, and dissolved proteins. And the fifth one, bone tissue matrix. No, cartilage tissue matrix is formed by chondroitin sulfate, which is secreted by chondrocytes. So bone is a mineralized with inorganic salts and collagen fibers. It's not made up of chondroitin sulfate. So the second statement is the correct one here. So I will give you a tip to remember this. So tendons and ligaments. So tendons attach muscle to bone, and ligaments bones at joints. So both joint and ligament has a T sound there. So in that way you can remember ligaments at joints. So obviously joints have bones. That's something you have to know as a bio student. So I think that's quite helpful to remember that, because I was someone who could not remember this clearly back then. So anyways, we are done with that question. And the eighth one, a common feature to both smooth muscles and cardiac muscles. So this theory about whole muscle thing is on YouTube. I have added a theory video. You can refer to that if you need more information about that section. But I will give a small summary. So we have three types of muscles as smooth, skeletal, and cardiac. And what you have to know is that their features, cell shape, and whether they are multinucleated or uninucleated, whether they are voluntary, involuntary, or whether they get easily fatigued, or they can work for a long time without getting fatigued. So those are the basic features that you have to know, whether they're striated, presence of sarcomeres and absence of them. So those are the common characteristics that you have to look for when you're studying that section. The best thing that you can do is to prepare a chart, and then you can easily skim for the features when you are revising that section. So A, striations present. Striations are present only in cardiac muscles because they have sarcomeres. And B, become fatigued slowly. No, it is just for smooth muscles. We cannot consider cardiac muscles as getting fatigued, because if they get fatigued, it means that they are dead. So if cardiac muscles are dead, means the person is dead. So there's no point in talking about that. The C one, yeah, it's correct. They consist of uninucleated fibers, and if you take the skeletal muscle, that is multinucleated. And the next one, involuntary inaction. Yes, both smooth muscles and cardiac muscles work involuntarily. There's a special type of signaling present in cardiac muscles which is known as myogenic, which means that they have the capability of generating their own impulses. And skeletal muscles are voluntary. They are under the control of somatic nervous system, which means that we have to think and do something when we do it with the skeletal muscles. The next statement, presence of intercalated. So intercalated discs are present in the myocardium, which is the cardiac muscle. So they're present in between cells. So that's unique to cardiac muscles. So it's not present in smooth muscles. Answer would be 4, because C and D are correct. And the next one, which one of the following occurred during skeletal muscle contraction? So in skeletal muscle contractions, the generally accepted theory is sliding filament theory. So then there was a weird question with a cycle in 2022 paper based on this. So I will draw a sarcomere, which is the contractile unit of striated muscles. So there are two main striated muscle types as cardiac and skeleton. skeletal, and if I draw this, so the length between two Z lines or EZ lines are known as the sarcomere, and we have thick filaments and thin filaments. So there are different zones or bands here as I band, H zone or H band, and A band, but in our syllabus they have not mentioned it, so I will simply explain this. So this is the I band, this is known as the M line, and this is the H zone, only with thick filaments. So this one I have colored them. The one single line would be the thin filament. So thin filament means actin filaments, thick filament means myosin. Both of them are contractile motor proteins. And this is a sarcomere, simple line diagram of a sarcomere. And important things for you to remember is that myosin, these thick filaments, have a tail region and a head region, and actin has a binding site for the head of myosin. So myosin have tails and heads, and actin have a region where the head region of the myosin can bind. They can bind together because it has a site for that. And when we take myosin again, the head of myosin also has a space to locate or bind with an ATP molecule. So those are the important stuff that you have to remember. So if I draw it properly, so this, if we take this as a thick filament and their tails are bundled together and they have a head sticking out, and this head has a binding site for ATP, and this, if we take this as actin filament has a binding site for the head region of myosin, and they bind together and form a cross bridge. So it needs ATP for that. So when they detach, automatically these filaments, or they slide past each other and muscle contraction occur in that way. So what you have to know is that this thick and thin filament length will not change during a contraction. And extra theory, the I band and H band will be shortened, but A band will not be. So you don't know those bands here. I did not label them in my diagram because it's not necessary, but I don't know whether you might need it or not. I will mark it here. So this is the I band and this is the A band. The whole thing is known as, the distance between two Z lines is known as the sarcomere. So what we mean by I band is this thin filament line, and A band has both thick and thin filaments. H zone just have thick filaments, so that's extra. So A band does not change in their length, and thick and filaments also don't change in their length. So what will be changing the length would be H zone and I band. So that's extra, you don't need that. So what they're talking about here, this question might be a bit out of syllabus, but A band will not be shortening, and I band is shortening. So this is quite out of syllabus, but I think in tuition classes you learn about this. That's why I added this, but I regret adding this now. So anyways, departing C lines from each other, no, they are coming together during a contraction of, no, thick and thin filaments won't contract. At high energy state, myosin can bind with ATP. No, at low energy state, it binds with an ATP molecule and use it and hydrolyze it and go to the high energy state. So that's how it happens. So that's the simple theory that I need you all to remember. You can read the note of the resource book for further information. So that part is quite important. 10th question, which of the following is incorrect regarding the disease of the respiratory system? So I added this one in all the systems. We have a section for disorders. My best tip, the best tip that you can use to recall all of them would be doing them all together. Take the disorders of each and every system together to a single note and study it. So that's how they usually add them, match the disorders, or something about the reasons and stuff like that. There are pretty important stuff that you need to remember when you study those disorders. So this thing is about the respiratory system. So we have asbestosis, silicosis, and smoking stuff. So here the wrong thing about this one would be, it would be temporarily not reducing, obviously. It would be increasing the rate of the heartbeat. That's why it's wrong. I have changed the word. So that's something that they do. They swap the keywords when it comes to making MCQ statements. So that's what I've used here. 11th one, incorrect statement about osteoarthritis. So the final statement, hormonal imbalances during menopause is believed as a major risk factor. This is related to osteoporosis, not osteoarthritis. That's why it is wrong. So in that way, they can mix up the reasons and causes and symptoms and all that. That's the way of forming these type of questions. So better to remember those key facts. I don't know whether I have to explain it further. I don't think so. It's just simple theory. 12th one, the maximum volume of air which can be inhaled and exhaled by lungs. So this is about lung volumes and capacities. So there are two types of questions that can be given, asking theory directly as given in this question, or else they can give numbers. They can give real volumes and give a small case study and ask you to calculate a value. Both of those types were given previously. In a recent exams, there were some questions, I think in 2020 or 2021, there was a MCQ about lung volumes and capacities with numbers. You can try it out after this. So there are mainly 4 lung volumes. I will write them down. TV, IRV, ERV, and RV. So TV, which is the tidal volume, the normal breathing, and IRV, inspiratory reserve volume, and ERV, expiratory reserve volume, and RV means residual volume. So IRV means extra. So tidal volume plus forcefully we breathe extra air into our lungs, and ERV means exhaling. Other than the tidal volume, we forcefully expire, forcefully exhale the air present, and residual volume means whatever we do, there's a amount of air present in our lungs that will not come out, whatever we do. So that's the residual volume. And when we combine one or more of these volumes, we get lung capacities. So we have mainly 4 as functional residual capacity, vital capacity, inspiratory capacity, and total lung capacity. So you have to remember the equations of them. So here what they're asking is the maximum volume of air which can be inhaled and exhaled. So that would be vital capacity, and the equation for vital capacity is tidal volume plus inspiratory reserve volume, ERV, IRV, and expiratory reserve volume, ERV. So those 3 come together and form the vital capacity. Okay, I hope that's clear. The next question, which of the following is correct regarding animal respiratory structures? So if we take the first statement, the respiratory structure of cnidarians is the external cell layer of the body wall. The point is that they don't have a body wall. So every cell of their body is in direct contact with the external environment. So that's why they don't need respiratory systems, and they can directly respire through their cells. And because of the large surface area, high surface area to volume ratio that they have. So that's wrong because of that. The next statement is the correct one. I will come to that in a bit. So the third one, only lungs behave as the respiratory surface of terrestrial animals. So only is there. So whenever you see words like only and always, you have to be very careful. So not only lungs. Sometimes if you take amphibians, they're considered as terrestrial animals, but they have moist body and they can respire using their skin. So that's the point where this goes wrong. And even if you take insects, they are also considered, I don't know whether they are considered as terrestrial. The best point would be considering amphibians, and they have both lungs and their skin used for respiration, not just lungs. And the fourth one is wrong because marine annelids possess external gills, not internal gills. Fifth one, all arthropods, all again. So only, always, all. So those three keywords are super important in MCQs. Mostly they lead to the wrong place in MCQ statements. So all arthropods, no. Arachnids have book lungs. So another logic would be using insects as the exception. Insects use tracheal system, not book lungs. So insects are also arthropods. Even though they are arthropods, they are using tracheal system, not book lungs. So that's a point where this gets wrong. So we can't consider it as all. That's why it's wrong. So the second statement, gaseous exchange in animals occur via respiratory surface. So yes, diffusion is necessary. Wherever it happens, even in our lungs, diffusion occurs. So diffusion is the main method, which is a passive form of transportation, which is used by all animals for respiration. That's a very important point. And 14, correct order of location, yes. So when it comes to epithelial tissues, the main things that you have to scan for while you're studying would be the features or unique features, functions, and locations. So when it comes to simple epithelia, there are 4 types that we consider: simple squamous, simple cuboidal, simple columnar, and pseudostratified. And finally we have stratified squamous as a compound epithelium. Simple means having a single cell layer, compound means having more than one layer. So stratified squamous is a compound epithelium present in outer skin, anus, vagina, and lining of the mouth. So I will teach you how to tackle this, how to approach this question. So the best way would be, so if you remember the nasal cavity or nasal passage, that repeats again in gaseous exchange. So this is present in animal tissues. Pseudostratified columnar, which is located in trachea as well as in the nasal passage. They have cilia and they are quite weird in their cell shape, and nuclei are located in different levels. Those are features of them. So they are present in trachea and nasal passage. Using that logic, you can eliminate some answers. And simple cuboidal are present in glands and kidney tubules. And the best point in the other way around, the only one thing you have to know is that intestinal lining has simple columnar. So columnar present, the only given example in our resource book is intestinal lining. In that way, you can tackle the question very easily. You are left with 2 answers only, and 2 and 4 only. So outer skin, trachea, and that is pretty tough. Only one difference as thyroid gland and blood capillaries. So blood capillaries and alveolar wall has simple squamous epithelium. So then you're left with the second answer. Anyway, you have to know their features and locations in order to get through this question. The last question, correct statement regarding gaseous exchange in humans. There are two types of respirations in our body, as internal and external. External respiration occurs between blood and lungs, and internal occurs between blood and tissues. So that's correct. B. Diffusion of O2 and CO2 require partial pressure gradient only during internal respiration. No. So diffusion is a passive form of transportation, and passive transportations always require a gradient, either a pressure or a concentration gradient. So always, for something to go from one end to the other end in a passive mode, they need a gradient. So keeping that in mind, you can't say only during internal respiration it requires. It is also required during external respiration. So that's wrong. Statement C, this was asked before in a structured essay to write this equation. So Hb plus 4O2 in equilibrium with HbO8. Hb plus 4O2 molecules giving HbO8. The next one, the alveolar surface is moist in order to dissolve respiratory gases for diffusion. This is a very important section in respiration of animals. You have to know that. There are some other features also. So let me show you that theory section. Here you can see those features that I mentioned. So it's important to study that section carefully, because they can ask why. What is the purpose of this and that? This is a very important hotspot for questions in structured essays, so better to study that. The last one, when a person is at rest, contraction of rib and diaphragm enough for breathing. Yeah. If the person is doing exercises or working out or something, running or whatever, then they need some extra support, and they use the muscles of the neck, back and chest in those cases. That's why when we are running or after running, we feel like the whole body is contracting and relaxing for breathing. So that's the reason where they use not just the rib muscle and diaphragm for breathing, but also using all the other muscles like the muscles of the neck, back and chest. Okay, so that's it for today. I hope you found this helpful, and I don't know whether I will be doing the structured essay today. Probably not, because I'm tired now. So thanks for watching. I hope you will be joining with the speed revision only if you're interested. And if you need the structured essay discussion, please mention that as a comment. At least it will inspire me or motivate me to do it. Yeah, thanks again. See you from the next video. Bye.